And the songs still shine, and the words still rhyme, and the songs still shine, and the words still rhyme. With your face so
That was
fine.
Bruce Piephoff's Mad Song off of his album Still Looking Up at the Stars. Just one of 21 albums he recorded along with 2 poetry books. He joins us today in the Greensboro Arboretum, one of the places where he enjoys a good walk. Oftentimes, local places like this will lead to poems or songs for Bruce. In this episode, we're going to learn about local singer-songwriter Bruce Piephoff.
Yeah, I was born here in Greensboro in 1949. And my father got out of the Navy and he bought a house on the GI Bill over in Garden Homes, which is off of Benjamin Parkway. So that's where I lived as a small kid, and then he later built a house out at Guilford College, and we moved out there when I was about 12.
As a hobby, his father played the harmonica and guitar, an early influence in Bruce's life.
Well, not professionally. He did gig a little bit around with some friends in the bars, and played harmonica and guitar. So, yeah, he got me kind of interested in the guitar. And he played folk music and listened to Bob Dylan and stuff like that.
And can you tell me about, he had a collection of Bob Dylan and Woody Guthrie records. Can you tell me about your first impressions of when you had first maybe started listening to those?
Yeah, well, those early Bob Dylan records and Woody Guthrie, they just sounded different from anything else that I was listening to. And it really didn't hit at first, because I was listening to a lot of soul and rhythm and blues music back then in high school. But my dad shared some of those records, and I started later on getting really interested in the lyrics and what these songs were about, what they were saying, and getting beyond the sound of the voice to what the real voice was. So.
And did that get you interested in kind of writing at that point, or did you start writing before you had thought about going to Chapel Hill?
Not really. In high school I was mostly preoccupied with basketball and other things, and when I got to Chapel Hill, I was trying to figure out what I was going to major in college, and I went through a lot of different choices and ideas, and finally I decided to be an English major because I like reading literature, and it just seemed to fit. And once I got into that area and started playing the guitar a lot, that kind of led to, like writing my own songs. And of course, the Dylan influence with poetry, put the music, just kind of took it from there.
Years later, Bruce ended up attending UNCG to finish up his bachelor degree in English, and then he went on to an MFA in creative writing.
Well, it started with an acquaintance that I had made with Fred Chappell and Robert Watson, who both taught in that MFA program. And they used to hang out at this bar up the street here from where we are right now called the Pickwick. It was a place where a lot of writers and artists hung out and just talked, and there wasn't a TV in there. It was just mostly conversation and beer. And so I'd met them around, as a musician playing around here. And then the way it happened was, after I got my degree, well, I was working in Durham, actually, as a recreation therapist at a hospital. And I decided, that I was going to go back to school and get my degree. And so I came back and got my BA in English, and then I applied to get in grad school because I really wanted to study writing, you know, learn something about the craft, not just songwriting, but poetry and fiction. And so I got in, and it was a great experience because there were all kinds of really good writers from all over the country, the world really, because the program had a good reputation. So that was cool, man. And they let me bring my song lyrics into the poetry workshops and present them as poems, and I got a lot of feedback. And you know, plus I had a couple of years there when I did a lot of reading, catching up on just reading the classics, and you know, all that stuff really just feeds into your writing.
Influential writers? Well, it's always hard to pick just one. But we'll ask Bruce anyway about the writers that had the biggest influence on him.
You know, there's so many that it's hard to, I mean, as far as songwriters, you know, I'd say like Dylan, Townes Van Zandt, John Prine, Guy Clark, Nick Drake, Tom Waits. Those are kind of my favorite influences, I guess. But I've listened to so many, you know, and then you have every decade brings a new artist, and there was Bill Morrissey and Greg Brown, and you know, now there's a lot of other new artists. But as far as literature, you know, I was really drawn to people like Carson McCullers, Flannery O'Connor, you know, William Blake, Charles Bukowski. I don't know, man, just so many writers that I got to read, and you know, I guess a little bit of all that goes into your own blend of when you start to write your own stuff.
The creative writing process varies for everyone. However, I'm curious as to what prompts Bruce's writing.
It comes in a lot of different ways. Sometimes it does come in the middle of the night. You get an idea and you know, write it down in a notebook like you got there in your hand. You know, I keep notebooks. I have like a whole box of them from over the years, and then sometimes I used to walk through this park. We're in Lindley Park Arboretum here, and I used to walk through here quite a bit every day, and sometimes you go out for a long walk and you get an idea like that. And you know, after I got a cell phone, I'd start calling them in, you know, recording them so I wouldn't forget. And so, but usually it's like it can be like one line or one phrase that's the kernel for a whole song or a poem. And so, you know, you jot that down, or you record it and hold on to it. And you don't always just sit down and write a song out in 15 minutes. Some of them come like that, but a lot of times you have a notebook full of things like that, and then you get some time, you sit down and put it together.
I'm curious how Bruce differentiates between writing for poetry and writing for a song.
Well, they are kind of intertwined. You know, I have like a lot of free verse poems that I put to music, kind of just shaping the music around the lines on the page. You know, your traditional songs are written like, you know, verse, chorus, and bridge, and you know, it's a little tighter. But I've written all kinds of songs, and I like working in different ways and mixing it up.
And sometimes in some of your songs, you just kind of you're strumming to a poem in a way, which is what music is in general. But you know, you're not really singing in every single song you have. You have sort of a strum that you go with the poem.
Yeah, some of the recordings are spoken word pieces. They're poems actually, and I'm reading with maybe a bunch of musicians improvising around the lyrics, which those things are fun. You know, other times they're just more conventional type songs, you know, vocal guitar.
Bruce has a wonderful ability to be hilariously depressing. What do I mean by that? Take a listen to Looking Up at the Stars, for example.
Well, you know, like Melancholy does inform a lot of my songs. I think I started off writing when things were hard times or serious things, but I learned early on that you need some comic relief and you need humor in your stuff, you know. And if you're writing about a sad situation, you don't want to just kill your listener. You know, you have to have a just, you know, like a crack of light there, you know, that people can, you know, look at the end of the tunnel. So yeah, and you know, like that song you're talking about, it's called "Still Looking Up at the Stars," and I'm down in a ditch, but I'm still looking up at the stars. You know, I don't, you know. And a lot of times, another thing you can do is you can have real serious lyrics in with kind of upbeat, bouncy kind of music instrumentation, which you have that, not to use a big word, but juxtaposition of, you know, the light and the dark and the happy and the sad.
This song, Grandpa, the way he sings it and the lyrics written seem to be very close to Bruce, very personal.
Well, yeah, that's about my grandfather. You know, my family, my fourth generation great-grandfather actually was born in Amsterdam. His name was William, the same as my first name, William Bruce.
Baseball and wrestling, and he'd take us to the games. He drove a Corvair Monza like it was a Corvette Stingray.
Is my name. He was William Russell, I believe, William Russell Piephoff, but he came to America. He was born in Amsterdam in 1782. Came to America, fought in the War of 1812, and then on down the generations to my grandfather, who was born in Spartanburg, but he came to Greensboro during the Depression. He was a tailor, professional tailor, and he was able to get a job during the Depression, and he worked at a clothing store downtown called Jans de Beau. And so when I was a kid, it's hard to believe, but like now I'm the age that my grandfather was when he used to take us as little kids to the baseball park. You know, the old minor league ballpark that was here, the Greensboro Yankees.
Yeah, War Memorial Stadium?
Yeah, War Memorial Stadium. He would take us to the ball games out there, and we'd buy bags of peanuts and sit with our gloves out on the right field line, you know, in the bleachers. And so yeah, that song is about all the things that I remember about him. And I had, you know, had a lot of good times with him. He was, so yeah, you know, I didn't intentionally choose this direction, but I have written a lot of character studies. For some reason, I really like character sketches. You know, I love people and I love characters, and that's one of them. You know, it's basically just telling a story about him, but trying to do it in a original way. Growing up in that time, you know, like as a little kid in the 50s and 60s, it was just a different world here than it is now. And certainly before the media saturation that we have now, you know, that, you know, we just, you know, we spend our time outdoors and doing things. And not that, you know, I mean, the media, you know, we're using the media right now. It's kind of hypocritical to say that, you know, but, you know, it definitely seems so pervasive now. Mm-hmm. Takes so much time.
And even in songwriting and things like baseball, it's sort of changed too, right?
Yeah, because now, you know, you can, I used to, if I wanted to find out something about a subject for a song or a poem, I'd have to go to the library and, you know, get books and research. Now you just Google it, you know, and all that. I mean, that's not the only source that I use, but it does, you know, change things in terms of finding things out. And I still write, you know, with a pencil or a pen in a notebook, and then I take that to the computer and, you know, like everybody else, put it up on, and, you know, files.
Do you feel more of like a connectedness, like you were talking about in the pen and paper, rather than typing it up? Do you feel more connected to your lyrics in a way, maybe?
Yeah, it's just I know a lot of writers that are like that. They still write on legal pads with pens or pencils.